Welcome in everyone to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson, and we are going to do, I guess we'll call it a pregame. The Arkansas Razorbacks men's basketball team kind of got back on track, at least for the moment, with a big win on the road against 12th ranked at the time Kentucky in Rupp Arena. Cal's return. Everybody's been celebrating that, but you have to turn your attention now to the Texas Longhorns. The Razorbacks certainly do, and as a fan, you're probably wondering now, can Arkansas sustain or pick up some momentum and add some more wins, because that's what the Razorbacks are going to have to do. But the Hogs are back on the bubble. ESPN bracketologist Joe Lenardi today updated his bracketology, and the Razorbacks are in the among the four teams, the next four out. So the first four out is the next higher rung until you get to the last four in. So the Razorbacks, where they're positioned, he's got them as the 74th ranked team in the projection, which means Arkansas's got five teams ahead of it in terms of who's not in. So you need to move up at least 6 spots, if in theory, to make the tournament based on this latest projection for Lenardi. We know there's a lot more to play out, but it just kind of helps explain what next four out is. Arkansas 6 spots, 6 slots away from being a team that would be considered dance worthy. And look, this is a team that's 13-8, only 2-6 in the SEC. It shows you how good this league is. But we're going to talk about a lot of things today. We're going to go through the 5 Razorbacks that I've kind of spotlighted that have really helped Arkansas go 2-1 in their last 3 games. Arkansas is a whisker away from being unbeaten in its last 3 outings after starting 0-5 in SEC play, but 2-1 in the last 3. And I'm going to go through 5 Hogs that have stood out, because it's not coincidental. It's also the marker for when Boogie Flan, the all-star freshman guard, I'll call him an all-star. I thought he was playing at an all-league performance despite the 0-5 start without him. And he's lost for the season as far as we know. But other guys have stepped up, and we're going to go through the kind of the 5 big names of these last 3 games, and then how the other 3 left in the rotation can help out and help Arkansas be better. Because I think Arkansas is going to have to do some things even more so than it was able to do against Kentucky. And we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to look at Arkansas, Texas on Wednesday. That game will be on ESPN2. It's another late start, midweek game, 8 p.m. on ESPN2. It renews a long history in terms of both teams being in the same conference again. They played out of conference against each other, not a whole lot, but the old Southwest Conference, everybody knows. This is Arkansas's, was what for Arkansas in football when they were in the Southwest Conference, Arkansas's biggest rival. That wasn't the case for Texas. Oklahoma and A&M were that fit the bill there, and Arkansas was probably third. But in basketball, it was always a big rivalry. It was probably 1-2 in the old SWC in terms of strength over the years since I was paying attention to it, starting in the mid '70s. So we're going to go through this particular matchup, kind of look at the history a little bit. So we're going to get to a few things, break down that game. But again, Arkansas back on the bubble. The win at Kentucky after, again, you were 1-6 in league play. The 0-5 start in league play, we said it, the worst start ever for Arkansas through 5 games in the SEC since joining the league in 91-92. The 1-6 start before Kentucky through 7 games was tied with 2 other seasons, including last year, Eric Patrick Melsman's last campaign at Arkansas, for the worst ever league start in the SEC for Arkansas. And then Arkansas only won a game in January, a single game, and that was the first game of this 2 wins in the last 3 outing stretch. That was against Georgia at home, and that was the only January win. You have to go back to Stan Heath's first Arkansas team in 2002-03 season to find an Arkansas team that only won 1 game in January. So it was pretty foul around here. Couple that with Cal going back to Rupp, where basically Big Blue Nation had written him off. They were ready. Many of that fan base, or much of it, if not most of it, was ready for him to go. It was a clean break. It was good for him to get a fresh start. But Kentucky's having a better season than Arkansas at this point, and so the betting lines had Kentucky as a double-digit margin favorite. Yet Arkansas was the team that held a double-digit margin for most of the second half and won by 10 points. So this was a big bump for Arkansas. It jumped from 59 in net to 47. And you understand now Arkansas's got that second quad 1 win. It shows you just how valuable that win against Michigan was in New York. In both wins, Arkansas scores 89 points. But I think there's other similarities between these teams in these situations, and that was back in in early December, December 10th. Yet Arkansas's first game in February now. You pick up that win on February 1st in Rupp Arena. But other than having the same score for the Hogs on the final tally sheet, I think what really helped Arkansas, neither one of those teams was particularly physical. And that's where Arkansas has had problems, is dealing with physicality and being inconsistent with physicality. I thought Michigan had a couple of 7-footers on the front line, but they were both they weren't really banger types. And I thought Arkansas matched up with the backcourt well for the same reason. Just throughout that lineup, not a lot of physicality. I thought the same thing with Kentucky. A 5-out offense, really no banger anywhere near. In Arkansas's front line, the true front line players have struggled with physicality and dealing with those kind of grinding situations where teams can be physical, get on the offensive glass, get into your body to get deflections out, beat you to 50-50 balls. Part of that requires a level of physicality. So I think all of those areas were areas that Arkansas wasn't necessarily checking boxes against some of these other SEC teams. But Kentucky, I don't think, have the talent level as Arkansas, but that goes to that athletic and physical talent as well. Those were areas that it was advantage Arkansas. It was also a game where Arkansas played its best 2 halves of the season. Even Michigan, Arkansas was down by double digits in the first half, got back in it by halftime, then took a double-digit lead, watch that wash away, and then it was a grueling battle to the end. Kentucky, Arkansas didn't have to overcome a double-digit deficit. I think the worst it was 18-12, kind of early in the game still, and Arkansas settled down, ended up taking a 4-point lead, led by 1 at halftime, and then the first 4 or so minutes of the second half built 11-point lead. And yeah, Kentucky cut that down a couple of times to 7 or 6, but it seemed like a big Z3 or a DJ Wagner play, or it was a Duthero grinding his way, getting either to the basket or getting fouled and then knocking down free throws. But Arkansas always had an answer. And it was the first time in a game this year, really against quality competition, where there wasn't an unsettling stretch for the Hogs where you thought, oh boy, they're going to let go of it here. They just can't get out of their own way. Now, they did still have some bonehead, unforced errors, self-inflicted wounds, some stuff that, going back to the OU loss, the biggest reason I think that happened is Arkansas fouled 3-point shooters on back-to-back possessions. Well, Arkansas fouled 3-point shooters twice against Kentucky as well. One in the first half where the shooter, Jackson Robinson, missed 2 of 3 free throws. Arkansas got lucky there. Second half, a guy knocks down a 3 and the free throw, 4-point play. Arkansas had a flagrant 1 foul. Arkansas had a couple of technicals at the end of the game. Just stuff like that kind of adds up. But Arkansas was just the better team, I thought, talent-wise. From a skill point standpoint, I would say no. But Arkansas just shot lights out, 13 of 25 from 3 against the Wildcats. And that's unprecedented. Arkansas was 9 of 18 at halftime. In only 2 other SEC games prior to that had Arkansas even made 9 threes in a game. And that was very much high water marks to even say that. And Arkansas had that at halftime. So Arkansas was really good at the free throw line, 75%. But by the time Arkansas had a double-digit lead at that point, when they built that, coming down the stretch, they had been shooting 90%, 9 of 10, finished out 3 of 6, but they did enough other things where that didn't hurt them. It could have, but it didn't. This was a situation where I thought this was a great matchup for Arkansas, similar to Michigan. And I said all that. I wanted to connect those two. I wanted to bring that up because Arkansas needs to be able to define an identity where even if the matchup's not always the most favorable, or it's a team that maybe checks some of the boxes at Arkansas where Arkansas struggles, they still have qualities that help them get to the finish line with wins. We just haven't seen enough of that. That's why I posed the question: is Arkansas's Rupp magic? Are you buying that's becoming maybe a trend? I mean, again, Arkansas has won 2 out of 3 and really could be 3-0. That OU game went down to the wire. Or are we kidding ourselves? Arkansas is back on the road against Texas on Wednesday. Then you come home to Alabama that looks like a Final Four contender. And are you staring down 2 consecutive losses? And now you're wondering again, is there a pathway for this team? Arkansas has been in must-win mode since starting 0-5. The Georgia game, must win. OU, must win, and you didn't. Kentucky, must win. So I think it's kind of that way for a little bit. until you're on the correct side of the bubble. And again, you've got to string together wins. You can't have one off and then 3 or 4 losses at this point in a row. You've got to at least, I think Arkansas now at 2-6 in SEC play. If the Hogs can even finish 5-5, that'd get them to in the last 10 SEC games, starting with Texas on the road. That would get the Hogs to 7-11, and I think they'd have enough quad ones in there because of these last 10 games. 7 of those right now will be quad 1 results based on where the net rankings are now, and 3 will be quad 2. LSU's on the borderline. LSU, the last I checked, was 75th in net. LSU, Arkansas gets the Tigers at home 3 games from now. So after Texas and Alabama, Arkansas will then host LSU. If LSU's outside the top 75, that home game will actually be quad 3. So Arkansas avoided bad losses in non-conference quad 3s and 4s. Perfect in those. That's part of your resume building here. If everything's going to be tough margins when you're on the bubble, you don't want any bad losses in quad. Check. You want some of your quad games to be wins away from home. Check. Arkansas's 3-5 overall away from home. That's actually solid. That's actually good. 2-3 in true road games, also good. The fact that the 2 quad 1 wins, when you play away from home, the net rankings, the way quad works is teams, if you're a neutral site, a team could be ranked 50th that you beat 50th on a neutral site, and that counts as a quad 1 win. A team could be ranked 75th where LSU is right now, and that counts as a quad 1 win if you win in a true road game. Where Arkansas lost at LSU, but had they won that game, LSU today at 75th in the net, that'd still count as a quad 1 win. But not all quad 1 wins are the same. Arkansas's 2 quad 1 wins are against teams that are ranked in the top 20 in net, and they were away from home. So that adds more value to what Arkansas's done. The away from home record, the road record's good, it's solid, and the two quad ones that you have are solid. You got 7 quad 1 losses. You just recently last week picked up your first 2 quad 2 results. They were both at home, OU and Georgia, and you split those. So you're the rest of the way again. 7 quad 1s remaining and 3 quad 2s. So Arkansas can add more quad 1 wins if they can go 5-5. They're going to do that, and it could be enough at 7-11. I think to have them on the correct part of the bubble, just getting in. I think they'd get in, but I don't think at finishing 6-12, which means a 4-6 record the rest of the way. I don't think that would do it going into the SEC tournament. I think Arkansas would need a run in the SEC tournament. Conversely, I don't think you have a lot of question marks if you finish 6-4 and get to 8-10. I think that's locked in going into the SEC tournament. But I think that middle spot, that Goldilocks zone in there where it's not too good, it's not too bad, it's maybe just right, is 7-11. That means you go 5-5, and I think that would probably do it. And there might be a scenario where you maybe need to win another game in the SEC tournament, maybe not. But I think at least going into the tournament, Arkansas, if it finished 7-11, the Razorbacks would probably be projected in, probably still somewhere on that bubble, but probably projected in. All right, so it's doable. And, Texas, I mentioned, then you come home for Bama and LSU, then you're on the road for Texas A&M and then Auburn. That's going to be tough. But then you come back home for Missouri, Texas again. You've got road games against South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and then home against Mississippi State. So again, Arkansas doesn't have to string together a ton of wins consecutively. They could bump along, win one here, lose one here, win one here. We just went through the formula how it would work. But Arkansas doesn't have to run off a ton of wins in a row to get back into this thing. They can actually, like I said, just as long as they can effectively break 500 or even a little better, that would do it. I don't know that that's a reality for this team. I need to see more. I'm just saying that would be the pathway if they can get things figured out. We don't know. I mean, guys were locked in extra special for Cal and themselves against Kentucky. The matchup was favorable. Kentucky had a level of pressure to win that game at home. There was a lot on that other end of the spectrum about beating Cal. So Arkansas is not going to necessarily have that elevated level of energy and sense of urgency for some of these other games. You'd argue why wouldn't they? That's just human nature. So a lot of things play into it. But there's some positives. I'm going to go through the player positives right now. I think Arkansas, when I look at this individually, when I saw Boogie Flan leave, you lost your top facilitator and your top shot creator from all 3 levels. That's what you lost. Adu Thero in tandem with Flan were your two best players. You could make a case either one was the better player at that point, but they were both right there. And then it was kind of committee after that, and up and down with guys on both front line and back court. But those guys were kind of your most consistent guys. Flan played hero on that first road win at Miami. Arkansas had to have that. Had a big game in New York against Michigan. I remember Thero was, I think, sick and dealing with illness or had run a temperature and gave Arkansas some decent minutes in that game against Michigan, but it wasn't his best outing. And then Thero was the hero against Georgia. And Arkansas trailed by 15 in both halves of that game at home, found a way to win, and it was kind of a Carter Knox Thero 1-2 punch on that offensive rebounding, getting to the free throw line, doing things. But Thero with the big plays down the stretch. So you kind of figured with Boogie Fland out, how do you survive with it just being Thero as the guy carrying water? It's interesting. In these last three games, again, Arkansas could be 3-0. They're 2-1 in them, but Thero's averaging 16 points in those games. It's a tick below what he was averaging before that. Just a tick below. I mean, what he averages on the season, 16.5 points. So it's not like he's had to go nuts to overcompensate, which you probably don't want. I mean, you don't want one guy to have to be the guy every time. You need committee. And Arkansas is starting to get that. But Thero, 16 points. He's raised his rebounding, 8 rebounds a game in these last 3, 2 steals. We've seen him lead Arkansas in steals, be one of the leaders in the league. So he's still checking that box. 54.5% from the field in these last 3 games. He's been effective from the field because we know he gets out in transition. It's a lot of dunks, layups, and interior shots. Doesn't take a lot of threes. But here's the key. Here's one of the keys, and one of Arkansas's problems is free throw shooting. This is one of the top free throw attempt generators in the country. So he gets there a lot. And he was shooting in the 60s for most of the season. It was part of Arkansas's problem, is not making free throws. Thero in these last 3 games is 22 of 27 at the foul line, only 5 misses. It's 81.5%. And in just those 3 games, he's brought his 60s percentage in free throws up to over 70 now on the season. On the season, he's like 72% now, 71, 72%, somewhere in there. So 81.5% in these 3 games. I can't say enough. And he was 10 of 12 against Kentucky. You had to have that. You had to have that. When we could say, Arkansas wins by 10, he makes 10 free throws in that game. That's one thing we can point to there. So he's been really good like he has been, except the free throw percentage is up. The free throw percentage is up. I think the next group of guys now, we start, who else then has picked up the slack with Boogie out? It's Nelly Davis is the first name that comes to mind, because in these 3 games, he's averaged 15 points, 4 rebounds, 3 steals. He's leading the team in steals these last 3 games. His minutes are gone up to 38, 39, playing big minutes now. But 3 steals a game, 1 assist away from averaging 3 assists in these games. And he's shooting 80% from the foul line. Now, he was a 90% free throw shooter. So 80% is a little low for him, but it's still, that's still good. But here's the key. He's taken 10 free throws in these last 3 games. You go, that's not a huge volume. No, but guess how many free throws he shot in the previous 5 SEC games when Arkansas started 0-5? He shot a total of 6 in 5 games. He's taken 10 free throw attempts in these last 3 games. So the more he's on the court, the more the ball's running through him, and you're trying to run stuff with him. He's not just a guy now that's catch and shoot opportunity off someone else's creativity, and then when he dribbles, he's looking to really get off the ball. You saw in that Kentucky game, I thought it was his best game in shot creation. Yeah, he knocked some catch and shoot down, but he also put the ball on the deck and went and got some of his. He was using ball fakes to get a numbers advantage, and the guy had 18 points on efficient shooting, 3 of 6 from 3, 7 of 14 from the field, but he also had 6 assists. So he was doing a little picking and choosing. We haven't seen that version of Nelly up until that point. Even though he had 18 against OU, he took a lot of shots. He took a lot of shots and didn't hit a lot, scoring 9 in the win over Georgia. This was his most efficient game when you combine it with the shot creation and the facilitating for others. And then you look again, the averages the last 3 games, and Arkansas's made improvement. 15 points, 4 rebounds, 3 steals, nearly 3 assists. This is what the guy was doing at Florida Atlantic last year. It wasn't just the 18 points a game and the 41% 3-point shooting that we've all twisted our heads around trying to understand how did it get so bad, basically scoring half the amount of points going into the Kentucky game, little over 9, and shooting such a low percentage from three. But what I remember was a guy that gets on the glass. He gets steals. He's a facility. All his numbers were respectable when you looked at it. Well, he wasn't just a scorer. So his scoring is improved, but he's doing the other things as well. He needs to be a comfortable player. He's not looked comfortable with Arkansas for so long. He actually looked comfortable against Kentucky. How much of that was that poorly ranked Kentucky defense coming in? A team that lacks physicality. A team I thought that at every position, Arkansas looked to me to be quicker and more athletic. That probably played into a little bit. So I'm not sold yet that this version of Nelly Davis is what Arkansas is going to get. And he did shoot poorly again against Georgia and OU, games that were more grind, physical type games where Arkansas was trying to gut out a win. The Razorbacks showed they could play that way, though, at home. And then on the road against Kentucky again, I think it was a great matchup for Arkansas. The Hogs went toe-to-toe in that fast-paced kind of game. I mean, I was surprised by that. I think the other thing was in that one, Arkansas had a week to prepare, no middle week game, so your legs are a little fresher. And again, all those extra bells and whistles and guys just locked in wanting to win that one for themselves and for Cal and the other assistant coaches that he coached there. So we just don't know what about those special qualities factored into that. I'm sure they did. And can Arkansas harness that kind of attention to detail? Because in a global, bigger picture, Arkansas for so much of this season has not looked connected at both ends consistently in both halves of games. They've struggled in first halves, even playing quad four teams. Second halves are typically they're a little better. In SEC play, you can throw it all out the window. 3-point shooting was horrendous throughout league play. I mean, Arkansas was shooting 24.8% from three with a little over 5 makes per game in league play. And they cranked that up to 13 of 25 against the Wildcats from distance and 52%. That's the efficiency. I mean, I don't expect stuff like that to move forward. I just don't. But can Arkansas be somewhere in the middle? Can they figure out a way to be somewhere in the middle? Nelly Davis would go a long way there, especially the way he shot against Kentucky. We'll see. The other guy that's next on my list is DJ Wagner. These 3 games, DJ's done several things here. He also, like Nelly, did not shoot well against either Georgia or OU and then had a good shooting game or an efficient shooting game with a huge second half, all 17 of his points at Kentucky, his return home. And of course, Thero, who I talked about, that was a return home for him as well. But DJ, 12.7 points in these last 3 games. He's averaging 10.5 on the season, so he's up that a little bit. It helps. Again, Boogie was averaging 15 a game. It helps supplement that. But 5.3 assists. He had a game high 8 assists against Kentucky. 5.3 assists in these last several games. And his assist to turnover ratio is 4-1 right now in those 3 games. 4-1, so he's doing a better job of taking care of the ball, and he's facilitating. This is one of the keys to losing Boogie Flam. We said in preseason, Arkansas effectively had 2 guys that could be your lead guard. Boogie was the better of the 2, but right now DJ's stepping up. He's done something to improve himself in that way because the numbers say so. Again, 5.3 assists and a 4-1 assist to turnover ratio. Again, he had 8 assists against Kentucky. It's a small sample size and only 1 turnover, so that helps that number, but still, and then 3.3 rebounds, 75% at the free throw line. Again, he didn't shoot well against OU or Georgia, neither did Nelly. But I've gone through the free throw shooting so far for 3 guys. Thero in these last 3 games, 81.5% on high volume. Nelly, more volume than we've seen from him at 80%. DJ Wagner, low volume, but 75%. You can live with that. So I think DJ again has done a very good job of settling into I'm the floor general now. I'm leading this team now. I think he has looked comfortable in that. He sure did against Kentucky. Kentucky they just never made Arkansas look uncomfortable. Arkansas's only problems in that game I went through, fouling 3-point shooters, giving up some and one stuff. We know Arkansas is going to have some unforced turnovers, but I never felt like Kentucky was going to really get Arkansas uptight. As that game moved on down the stretch. It just never felt like they had the will to do it. They can't get up into your body defensively. When refs tend to let things go the later the game moves on, and if it gets tighter, they just didn't have the personnel to do that. Most of these SEC teams do. But the names I've just went through, all of these guys looked really comfortable against Kentucky. And then in those grind games, they were checking doing things Arkansas needed to have a chance to win in those games where it was more physical. So it's not just that Kentucky's in a vacuum. You do have those two games at home. Now, I don't think Georgia and Oklahoma are world beaters, but remember, Arkansas was getting shellacked in some ways against some of these other teams. And it just hadn't been the case in the last three. So there's some things that are starting to shift, and it's without Boogie so far. And this is not an indicator that Arkansas is worse with Boogie. I think what it means is guys are being forced to do more now, and maybe just by that fact, they're getting more comfortable being relied on more to do more. So it's just an interesting dynamic. I don't know that Arkansas couldn't have done the same thing if Boogie had stayed healthy. Maybe they could have, but for whatever it is, and Arkansas's down to 8 rotation. And any more attrition, and we're probably not going to talk about what's still possible. I don't know that Arkansas can afford any more. But again, DJ, I would say Thero, Nelly, and DJ are the ones now. I think you can count on Thero. I think we've seen that. He's dependable. Can you get what Nelly and DJ have provided these last 3 games, especially the efficient, more efficient like they were against Kentucky? Can you get that consistently from them? I think it's going to take, a Superman, a Batman, and Robin relative to what you need. Game in and game out. You need 3 superheroes, and to some degree. Doesn't mean they all need to score 20 or have double-doubles and all that. I mean, great if they do. I'm not saying you have to have that. I'm saying you need these guys to consistently look like they not only belong, but holding their own and then some against some of the better players in the league at their position. So I think that's what Arkansas is going to need consistently. It doesn't mean every single game, but pretty much. I mean, at this point, your margin for error with where your record is and what you still need to do. It's not like you have to win them all, but you got to be good enough to win at least half of them. And I think that's what it's going to take from those guys. The other guy that really stands out to me, 2 more, but I'm going to go with Carter Knox, the freshman wing. McDonald's All-American. He is looking more and more comfortable in what his role is. He's a big physical guy. His shot selection's better. He's actually decreased his volume by understanding there may be a better shot than the one I'm about to take. I think he's started to really buy into that. But these last 3 games, 10.3 points, 4.7 rebounds, a steal per game. He's shooting 40% from 3 in the 3 games combined. So even though everybody looked like they shot well and did against Kentucky, he's shooting 40% when you combine the 3 games. And I think that's promising, especially when you lose a Boogie Fland, who was even percentage-wise, even though he'd been struggling in SEC play, most of his struggles were actually worse from 2-point shooting than they were from 3. But Knox is stepping it up from 3, and he's shooting 84.6% from the foul line in these last 3 games. And I keep talking about the free throw percentages because now I've gone through Thero, Nelly, and Knox. The guys that are taking the volume, these are the ones that are leading you in scoring. In these last 3, I just went through their averages. They're all of them averaging double figures. So they're the ones taking the shots. They're the ones creating opportunities. They're the ones getting to the foul line. And I just said it. Thero's over 80%, 81% these last 3. Nelly at 80. Knox at 84.6. DJ at 75. He was a 75% free throw shooter last year as a freshman at Kentucky. He needs to, as a guard, I think you need to be closer to 80. I really do. At 78 to 80 is probably where you need to be as a guard. That's just my take on it. You got to get that good at it. So we'll see with DJ. But Knox, the guy, he'll crash the glass for offensive rebounds. He will battle for offensive rebounds so that even if he doesn't get it, he keeps the ball alive. He's the kind of guy that forces the other team maybe to knock the ball out of bounds off on themselves. You get a dead ball team rebound because he was in there battling. It wasn't easy for him to get it. He and Thero. So Arkansas's getting more. You talk about physicality. It's just not there with Z and Jonas Adu and Trevin enough. But these 2 guys, it was for a while, it was really Thero. Knox has started to understand how to play with that frame and have that kind of impact. So you look at the stats, that's one thing, but the eye test tells me, and he's gotten better defensively. I really like what Carter Knox is doing right now, and the numbers speak for themselves in these last 3 games. He's really come on. Because if you looked at the previous 5, the first 5, it just wasn't there with him either. And now all of a sudden it is. Big Z, Arkansas's had kind of musical chairs. He was Arkansas's first big to play. Jonas Adu had to work his way back, and Z in non-conference had some decent games in terms of knocking down some threes and some scoring games, and he'll block shots. two and a half per game there for a while. And then he kind of disappeared for a while when Adu and Brazil started playing better. And then lately, Big Z in Arkansas's last bad loss on the road in Missouri 4 games ago, he had a double-double in that game. He was finally heard from. And ever since that time, his production's gone up. But he had a good game. He hit some big shots going back to Kentucky. Had a really good game against the Wildcats, scoring the ball, especially from 3. But in these last 3 games, again, he's averaged 10.3 points, same as Carter Knox, 4.7 rebounds, same as Carter Knox. He's down to only 1 block per game. That's okay, because his rebounding and some of the physical stuff's a little bit better. It's still not great, but he's shooting 41.2% from 3 when you look at the last 3 games. Okay, so now you've got 2 players, even in those grind ugly games factored in against OU and Georgia, 2 players shooting 40% or better from 3 in that total stretch. And then you had this last game where Nelly and DJ started knocking down some threes. So we don't know where that's going, but maybe there's something there where Arkansas can be better than the 24.8% they were coming into Kentucky from distance. You'd like to get around 1 out of every 3. If you're a bad 3-point shooting team, if you can move it up somewhere close to that and continue to knock down free throws, that's why I went through all those percentages on free throws. It matters. Arkansas was just so up and down at the line. And remember, they missed 11 free throws in a winnable game at home against Florida where they lost by 8. They missed 11 free throws in that one. So if Arkansas can maintain some of this stuff, they're showing you, the reason I went through all these stats, Arkansas is showing you a blueprint for how maybe they can get it done to win some of these games. Because it's going to take being better than they had been at the line, from shooting from 3. Having more games like they did against Georgia where they really attacked the offensive glass. Arkansas was competitive on the glass against Kentucky, -3 overall. Kentucky was +6 on the offensive glass, +5, 9-4 on the offensive glass, +11 in second chance points. That was the one area that Arkansas kind of wasn't great at, but guess what? They were so good shooting at the foul line, shooting from 3 overall from the field and in transition. That's another thing. Arkansas was an elite transition scoring team in non-conference. It hadn't been there in league play. And it was against Kentucky, 18-5 in transition points. Arkansas had 10 steals, Kentucky only 2. So it wasn't just the 3-point shooting and being solid at the line. Kentucky actually shot 2 more free throws than Arkansas, not a big advantage there, but made 3 fewer. Kentucky had a bad game at the line, and it was reminiscent of things Arkansas had done to put itself in losing positions to start 0-5 in the league. That's how stuff like that happens. Now, Kentucky's a team that's got a lot of good wins, so it's not a chopped liver team. I just thought it was a great matchup. I'm not so sure about Texas. So we're going to move into this matchup pretty soon here. I'm 33 minutes in. But one thing I will say is I still think, in concert with those 5 guys, Arkansas's got to get more from Jonas Adu. They've got to get more from him. Calipari said most recently said he's playing at 90%. I mean, whatever it is, 90% hasn't looked very good for a guy that was an all-league player at Tennessee last year. He's had some moments. He's had a few games. I'd say less than a handful, though, of the kind of games you need from him. And in SEC play, it's even less. Obviously that's some of those that I just mentioned. If he had a handful of good games, were in non-conference. So now that you're nearly halfway through, he just hasn't done enough there. Trevor Brazile, once league play started, he was the Michigan game was good for him. Some of those quad 4 opponents after that in December, he had some nice games. He has moments, but he's just not the kind of producer that I think potentially he could be, but it's just not there. And then Billy Richmond's the one name I didn't mention. I thought he had a good game at Kentucky. I think he's a guy that can give you splash minutes, have positive impact. I think he played 10 minutes, 2 of 3 from the field. He got a steal on the sideline, went in and dunked it, and guys were getting back on defense. And I knew he was going to go in and dunk it no matter what. He wasn't going to lay it in. Had a little mid-range shot. I think he had a steal, at least. I know he had at least one steal, but he can be disruptive and use his athleticism. But he was a box score +10 in his 10 minutes at Kentucky, so that was good. When he's on the court, Arkansas was better for it. But Jonas Adu and Trevor Brazile, where they are now, I mean, as long as Big Z's producing, but there's only so much physicality he's going to give you. And Kentucky, even though it's not a physical team, sent its big man right at Big Z in the second half. And you start to wonder, well, Kentucky didn't take a lot of threes in the second half. I think what the game plan was, because Adu wasn't effective and Big Z's not physical, was to go at him. The big man, Amari Williams for Kentucky, is not only a good uh, 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 got a good touch around the basket and shooting a little bit because he knows how to play. He's a veteran guy. He's got good size. He can go left or right on you, but he's also a good passer. And I think they were tempting Arkansas to try to protect Z by doubling on those ISO plays so that he could pass out the 3-point shooters. And Arkansas just kind of let Z go with it. And Arkansas was shooting so well at the other end. Like I mentioned, DJ Wagner, 17 second half points. Thero consistently attacking that paint, getting to the foul line, finishing around it. That double clutch reverse layup was a highlight maker. Carter Knox getting out in transition. I mean, Arkansas did a good job. Nellie Davis got at least a couple of buckets around the rim or in the paint. Strategy-wise, whatever teams try to do going forward, there's just not going to be a lot of matchups like Kentucky for Arkansas. As good as that team is, Texas is the next one. But the Longhorns, 15-7 overall, 4-5 in the SEC, 25 in net. They're 4-6 in quad one games, 2-1 in quad two. So this is a team that's actually, doubled up Arkansas on the amount of quad wins. Quad one wins, played 3 more games that are quad one results. And they've beaten teams Arkansas has lost to. They won at OU in a close game. Arkansas lost to OU at home in a close game. Texas beat Missouri at home. Well, Arkansas lost to Missouri, got blown out, and that was a road game. Texas has also split games with A&M, winning at home against the Aggies. Arkansas hasn't played the Aggies yet. Will only play once. And Texas is coming off a 30-point road win on Saturday against LSU. We knew Arkansas lost by 4 points at LSU. So if you're doing, same opponent comparisons, it looks like advantage Texas there. It's a team that's, again, 25th in net. Arkansas is 47th. But Texas is 10-3 at home. They're not great at home. You can win on their home court. I don't know if Arkansas can, but teams have gone in and done it 3 times. Ken Palm, Texas is pretty steady. Ranked 30th in Division I in offensive efficiency rating, and 36th in defensive efficiency rating. Arkansas is 33rd in the same metric on defense, 84th in offense. We know the offense hasn't been very stellar until Saturday. Arkansas, again, did that against Michigan, and then what? I mean, against other high majors that are good, they've been struggling. So we just don't know what happens next. But I don't expect Arkansas to go into Austin and score 89 points and win. I'll say that. Arkansas leads the all-time series 87-68, and they're 27-42 in Austin. This is a situation. I go back all the way to the triplets and playing guys like Ron Bax or some of the Texas greats, LaSalle Thompson, Mike Wacker. They've had so many great players, and those were great battles. And, back when Nolan was there, the Lee Mayberry shot when Nolan had already left the game in protest, and he gets it to overtime, and Arkansas wins that game in overtime, beating Texas in the Elite Eight under Nolan in Dallas. That Elite Eight win sent Arkansas to the first of 3 Nolan Richardson's Final Fours in the 89-90 season. I'll never forget those games and those backcourt matchups with some of those great players that Texas had. Lance Blanks, Travis May, the other guard, I can't think of his first name. Last name was Wright. Loxley Colley on the front line. Those Texas teams were good. Tom Penders and just some of those matchups. I mean, Arkansas played against a Kevin Durant, his one-and-done season at Texas. One of Arkansas's not very good teams a few years back played Texas in a non-conference game. I was at Texas's brand new arena 3 years ago, or was it 2 years ago? It seems like forever ago. It was Arkansas 2 years ago when you had Anthony Black, Nick Smith Jr., and Jordan Walsh on their one-and-done trio of 5-star freshman season. In that exhibition game, Arkansas got waxed in that place. But I was there for that exhibition game, and the coach then was Chris Beard, who's obviously now at Ole Miss, and Beard and Ole Miss already have that win in Fayetteville over Arkansas. But having said all of that, this will be exciting. Having Texas back in the league is exciting. I'm glad that they're on the round robin. I think Kentucky should be the other team that Arkansas plays home and away every year. I think Texas is probably the next one I would pick out of that. And then if you're going to have 3 annually, I know they're going to maybe change how many league games are played, or they're talking about it, so that may impact how many you have. But another one, if you had Arkansas, Texas, I'm not saying what they'll do, but I think what they should do, it should be Arkansas, Texas, Arkansas, Kentucky, and then the other one you could pick Arkansas, Missouri, or Arkansas, LSU. I'd be fine with that. Either one of those. But the ones that have stayed kind of a permanent round robin are Missouri and LSU. A&M was one of those. That's now a one-off this year. Texas came in as the one that's round robin, at least for this year. So the Longhorns, again, will return to Arkansas later this month. It'll be, I think, 4 games in between, 4 or 5 games in between before they'll meet again. Texas averaging just under 79 points. Here's what's good about Texas. The Longhorns, less than 10 turnovers a game, about 9.5 turnovers. And they force just over 12. So they take care of the basketball. That's supposed to be Arkansas' strength. It hasn't been in league play. It was against Texas when it had 10 steals, forced 14 turnovers, was +6 in the turnover department, and +13 in transition. I don't know that you're going to get that. This team doesn't turn it over a lot. But Texas is not a big offensive rebounding team, about 9.6 per game. And giving up about 10.5. So -1 on the season. Offensive glass. Arkansas is hit and miss there. Texas is a good free throw shooting team, 56th in Division I, over 75%, 75.4%. And they take just over 20 a game. So a similar number to how many they take is OU. OU is shooting 80%. This team's still very good, ranks 56 in D1 at over 75%. On offense, they're making only 7.7 threes per game, but at a high rate, 37.2% from distance. That's 44th in Division I, so top 50 there. Shooting 54% overall, 54.4% on 2-point shots. That's 50th in D1. So overall, Texas is just over 48% from the field. That ranks in the top 40, 38th in D1. So this is another good offensive team. It's similar to Oklahoma in terms of the numbers. They're good from 3, they're good from 2, and they're good from the free throw line. So there's some comparisons there. Oklahoma was also a team that wasn't great on the offensive glass coming in. Early in that game when Arkansas got behind by 13, OU was cleaning Arkansas up on the offensive glass, and Arkansas kind of got back into it. And part of that scenario was getting on the glass. So we'll see about Texas. Defensively, Texas holding teams to 41.3% from the field. That's 64th in D1. Arkansas's not been a good offensive team. Teams are making 6.3 threes per game at 32%. That's not all that great. That's not even midway of that doesn't sound like a great percentage, but they're not just stifling on perimeter defense for what that's worth. Arkansas just hasn't been a good 3-point shooting team. And I keep saying that it almost doesn't matter where the opponent falls in defensively there because Arkansas is not very good. From a player standpoint, Trey Johnson, the freshman, this guy's a lottery pick. He's a guy that Arkansas recruited, guy that I've covered and seen play on the spring and summer circuits in person. Big guard, big scoring guard, 19 points per game, and he's shooting on good volume, 37.7% from 3. Arthur Kaluma. Now, this is a guy that reminds me, there are some similarities between him and Jalen Moore, who was OU's kind of 3-4 tweener, like that matched up it pretty evenly with Adu Thero. OU wasn't one of Thero's best games, and Jalen Moore, who made the big plays late in that game, they had comparable games. And Arthur Kaluma's that veteran guy, played at, Kansas State, Creighton. He's been around at 13.6 points and 8 rebounds per game. So he's in that wheelhouse of that kind of 3-4 guy, and he shoots 45% from 3. So there's the difference between he and Adu is the 3-point shooting. But Kaluma's kind of that guy that can, sort of like that Jalen Moore at OU. So where I thought Thero ran wild with nobody that could check him for Kentucky, I don't know that he's going to be able to do that in this game. It's not to say he won't have a good game, but he might be neutralized to some degree by the counterpart. So keep that in mind. Jordan Pope, transfer, I think it was, Oregon State, one of the top transfer guards out there. I think he had a slow start, doing better. He's 11.6 points per game, but shooting 36.9% from 3. So again, you looked at the top 3 names I said here, all these guys are shooting high clips from 3. Tremont Mark, the former Razorback, watch how motivated is he? How locked in is he? Does he have one of those special night kind of games against his former team. But the wing, just under 10 points per game, 9.6, but 38.3% from three. I mean, they got guys that can shoot it. And then the big man, a senior, Shedrick, who's been there, 8.4 points, 6.2 rebounds. He's their shot blocker, 1.6 per game. They go about 7 or 8 deep. Those are the main names. Those are the top 5 guys. I went through, kind of Arkansas's 5 and their stats lately, and here's the guys for Texas. So, this is a game where I look at it. Arkansas, to me, probably, if they can keep tempo down, command, somehow dictate pace. The game's scored in the 60s. I'm not saying it has to be that low like they were in Fayetteville. But maybe keep that pace down and keep it at least in the low to mid 70s. I think that benefits Arkansas playing this against this opponent on the road. But we'll see what happens. I mean, we're not. I don't know if this Arkansas team is really good enough skill-wise shooting and creating shots against this kind of team to expect to go out and score 89 points and shoot at such high percentages. I think there's a reality here where you come back down to earth, and it doesn't mean you can't find a formula to win. And I think that formula is you've got to find a way to reduce those self-inflicted wounds. When you get to the free throw line, you've got to find ways to get there and then make them at a you need to be 70, in my opinion, you need to be as close to 75% as possible to give yourself a chance to win on the road. Arkansas did that against Kentucky, got right at that number 75. But I think that's probably the formula you need to think about in terms of where does that efficiency need to be. And of course, if you're shooting 75%, you're only taking 8 free throws, you might be in trouble. So you need to get those attempts up there. And the way you do that is to slash and grind that game, get it on that offensive glass, put pressure on Texas by not bailing out with a bunch of threes. I don't think that's the strength of this team. Arkansas took 27 threes against OU, made 9, 33%. That's not awful. Then shot a great game from 3. So who knows? Maybe they're feeling it. Maybe they see something there that's working and guys are picking up some confidence. I'm not saying Arkansas should shut down three-point shooting. I'm saying not at the cost of being physical, getting on the offensive glass. This is a team that's not that you can maybe have some success there. We'll see. But I think that's where Arkansas's plan needs to be, is to try to make this a game where I don't mind 45 foul calls like Georgia. People don't like that, but as long as Arkansas is benefiting from it, I'd rather that than Arkansas not defend the 3, get way behind and start shooting threes and making that the formula because they're trying to catch up. That's just not how this team's built. Maybe that's a better 3-point shooter when it's a front runner. That tends to happen sometimes. So getting off to a good start, I'd say, is a key. You're going to have to figure out a way. To me, the matchup between Adu Thero and Arthur Kaluma could end up being the most critical one. I also think now Big Z being good is not going to be good enough on your front line. I think Jonas Adu and Trevor Brazil are going to have to show up in this one and give preferably they're somewhere combined between 18 and 20 points and 8 to 10 rebounds. We haven't seen enough of that with those guys combined since non-conference. Arkansas could really use that. Or if Big Z's having a night like he has, maybe it doesn't have to be quite that good, but it needs to be more than what they've shown lately. So there's that. How does that play out? I think DJ Wagner, the way he's playing, he and Jordan Pope, that's another matchup to keep an eye on. Trey Johnson's been mostly a shooter. Nelly Davis can actually impact the box score with some of the defensive plays he's made. Not only these 3 steals per game, the last 3, but he's also creating dead ball turnovers or by getting deflections and just getting into guys and he times these things up and ball goes out of bounds and it's Arkansas's ball. So he's creating some havoc. Nelly needs to continue to do that. We'll see how and who's matched up with who. Trey Johnson has good size on the perimeter. And then Tremont Mark's a guy, after covering him last year, he's not a catch in the flow, score on the flow kind of guy. He kind of gets ball dominant, needs to pound the rock to get into a shot. And sometimes that can be problematic, but Texas is playing well right now. Some of those wins I mentioned have come recently. And so maybe he's figured out a way to fit in and blend in. But another guy to keep an eye on, again, how does Arkansas match up with him? I think Carter Knox, going back to him, he's going to have to guard some of these more veteran guys. And he's not going to have, again, position-wise, Arkansas across the board is not going to have an athletic talent advantage as much as it did against Kentucky. It just won't be. That's not to say that Arkansas can't be the better team, and we'll see what happens when they show up and actually tip it up and play. But I do think Arkansas, when I look at a guy like Knox and when I look at a guy like Avicic, they benefited from lack of toughness with Kentucky. Texas will have more toughness, and these guys are more veteran than some of Arkansas's younger players, and that's kind of where I'm going with that. That's why it's so important for Nelly and Thero, as long as they've been around, and even DJ, who had a full year of experience as a lead guard a lot, he's back in that role. But they're probably your more veteran guys. Remember, Avicic, even though we're this deep in the season, only had 15 games last year, and he's not the most physical guy. So I'm kind of looking at combinations of things. Knox can be physical. It's just learning how to play that way. He's gotten better and better. But this will be a tougher group than what he faced. What does Billy Richmond give Arkansas off the bench? I don't know. But to me, this is a game where I'd like to see Arkansas. I was honestly surprised until I realized what the advantages were against Kentucky, that Arkansas not only played at that pace, but played better at Kentucky's pace than Kentucky did by getting up that, 27 threes against OU and then 25 against Kentucky. But you shot at a high clip against Kentucky, not pitiful against OU. Maybe there's something there. Maybe you keep your volume there somewhere between 20 to 25. I guess it depends on how many you're hitting too and what other successes you're having. But for me, be physical, get on that offensive glass, manufacture free throws. You got to find ways to turn this team over. If you only get 10 out of them, because that's basically what they average, you got to make the most of it. And you can't have the self-inflicted wounds where your turnovers are much worse than theirs are, and that's where you lost the game. So those are kind of my keys. I know I was all over the map of that because there's not one simple thing with this Arkansas team. There's not been one or two areas you go, if Arkansas could just fix one or two things, it's been 5, 6, sometimes 7 things in these stretches of bad play where you're like, whack-a-mole, how do you get this resolved? And I think part of that is maybe guys are buying into roles more. I'm seeing it with Carter Knox. I'm seeing Big Z figure things out a little bit. He's a little bit better on the glass. He's got his confidence back shooting a little bit. You look at Nelly, again, a guy that's starting to produce. You want to see him be consistently better with his percentages. Same with DJ. And then Thero's been Thero. He hasn't had to raise too much. He has brought those rebounds up to 8 per game in these last 3, and that's where Kaluma is on the season. I can't wait to see that matchup tomorrow night. I want to thank you for joining. Welcome Texas into the SEC. Arkansas would love to welcome, just like they welcome Mark Pope into the SEC as a head coach, to welcome Texas as a program into the SEC with a win on their home court. That's what Razorback fans want to see. I really think if Arkansas can win this game, it might be enough, depending upon what other teams do in the next projection on Friday from Lenardi, that Arkansas could maybe be in as a last 4 in, because they're only 6 slots out, and a win on the road against a team ranked top 30 in net might be just enough to slide you there when you're only at that point, you would be 14-8 and 3-6. Think about that. 33% winning percentage in your conference, and you might be midway point, you might be back on the correct part of the bubble, if only by a hair. Lose the game, and you're probably off the bubble again for now, but you're not far from it. And you still, again, if you go 5-5, you could afford to lose this game and then pick them up elsewhere. But this is one that's ripe. Again, Texas is not perfect on its home court. And even though I think it's advantage Texas, I do. I think I don't know what the point spread is. I didn't look at that. But Texas should be favored, and if they're not, I'd be shocked. But I think it's advantage Texas in this game. Longhorns playing on its home court, I do. But I think Arkansas can stay in it and give itself a chance to win in the last 4 minutes. Arkansas wasn't faced with that against Kentucky. The last 4 minutes, Arkansas had a 3 possession lead. What is Arkansas going to do when it's only a 1 or 2 possession game? Well, we saw mixed results against OU and Georgia. Those games were at home. So Arkansas needs to, no matter what happens in between the first 36 minutes, if you're in that game late, what are you going to do? And we saw Arkansas have correct answers against Miami, against Michigan way back in early December. We saw them finish right against Georgia not that long ago. Can they build on that? Can that happen again? OU, it was right there, and Arkansas blew it. So you need to be more consistent in how you finish games that you're in. If this turns into a blowout for Texas, wow, we'll be scratching our heads again. But if it's close, Arkansas's just got to find a way. And I think being the more physical team again, and just eliminating the self-inflicted wounds, especially late, easier said than done, right? But maybe guys are getting confident in these roles. Maybe DJ Wagner's ready for the moment to be the lead guard and be in those situations. That big second half was so clutch. Can he add to that? So it may just come back down to who's the better floor leader late, something like that. I like the idea of getting the ball into Due Thero's hands if you've got one bucket you need late, down one or tied or up one, late possession, because he gives you a multitude of things. You don't need him to be a setup guy in a game that he can necessarily, if you can get him going to the basket, because mostly good things are going to happen. Get to the foul line where he's now making free throws or get a finish. So it's stuff like that. All right, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We're just barely under an hour. I appreciate you joining me. Things are good today, again, because you're still living off that Kentucky high, but tomorrow it gets serious again. Can Arkansas do it? Until next time, we will have a post game tomorrow night. It's at 8 o'clock start, so it will be late. If anything breaks that we need to come back on and do a live, we will. But thanks for being here. Hit subscribe, like, and share. That helps us out. Until next time, take care. We'll see you then.